To do my favorite Thomas and Friends Halloween episode because I haven't done this for a while. I mean, it's not like the first time that I did a Thomas and Friends episode review. So the episode I'm going to review of the Thomas and Friends model series 5th series season is likely my favorite kind of Halloween episode of the Thomas and Friends model series 5th season. And that episode is Haunted Henry. So, I'm going to summarize my plot points. I'm going to summarize my review and then I'm going to tell you why this is my favorite Thomas and Friends Halloween episode. So, the episode actually starts with an old station near an old branch line that Edward used to work on a long time ago, and likely the length of the episode was likely shortened, unlike its previous iteration, which was a bit longer. So the episode basically starts with a moonlit night when Henry was about to take a goods train down to the station by the lake when an owl hoots. This worries Edward as he warns Henry to watch out for ghosts, especially when they come out in the mist. But Henry brushed it off and saying it's nonsense. However, this brush off leads to him truly believing in what the story was real. When the fog came in, there was an amber light, a closed off gate, a red signal, and a moving light in a station building. So obviously, Henry gets scared, and his driver tells him that they should rather go back instead of going on further because it would likely scare Henry even more. And likely, the next morning, a worker was talking about the unsafe viaduct, and likely, they were glad that Henry did not go past that area a long time ago. However, Henry still believes that something felt a little bit strange when going down that line, and he said there might be such real things as ghosts. However, ironically, the ending of the episode shows us that the ghost was not really a ghost at all. In fact, it's an old fogman named Old Bailey. So where did this plot point came from? Actually, the plot point of the episode was a bit longer, and Edward tells Thomas and Percy what really happened. In fact, this deleted extended version of the story was actually done as a toy remake instead of the actual episode itself. If you want to watch the extended version of Haunted Henry, make sure to go down to YouTube and find out for yourself. So, what are these scenes that were deleted from the Haunted Henry episode? Well, the deleted episodes or deleted clips used for Haunted Henry is Edward explaining what the real legend of the story really was, and the station in the beginning of the intro, and likely Old Bailey telling Henry the truth what his grandfather was seeing, and likely the whole extended version of the episode was a bit longer compared to the previous. So I'm guessing that the shortened episode never gave us an explanation of how the story originally went for, because some viewers never really understand what was the story behind it, and likely the story title of Haunted Henry was restyled as Henry and the Haunted Station, or likely Henry and the Friendly Ghost was likely some point one of the plot points of this episode. And not gonna lie, this episode was really good. In fact, it scared everyone to believe that what a ghost really looks like, and in fact this might draw to the most plot point because I think this episode is kind of funny at the same time, because likely there was a bit of silliness and humor around this episode. I'm not gonna lie, this episode was the funniest episode that I ever watched. And I actually enjoyed watching this episode. I actually found out that the US did redub this episode as well, because Thomas and Friends was now being sold as a worldwide phenomenon that soon followed out as a whole franchise. And from what I can tell, they should have really retold this story in CGI, but this time add more characters to the emphasis of the story. James, Gordon, or even Nia or Rebecca. I think the CGI series this 2026 coming soon, because I think they really should rewrite this story as a tribute to Henry no longer being part of All Engines Go, even though he was just seen in the background. And from what I can tell, this episode should have been refocused on in the new series of the Thomas and Friends franchise now returning in 2026 today. And it should likely focus on Nia because I don't think she ever heard of the Haunted Station before or Old Bailey. I think this episode was practically one of the most rewatched episodes of the Thomas and Friends series along with Percy's ghostly trick, and likely I should have done more show reviews of each episode regarding how bad or good they are or how best they really describe the story further. So, Haunted Henry is definitely my number one pick of the Thomas and Friends franchise because I think this episode really takes on its morality seriously as what people can actually do for this. The whole plot point of this episode may have gone up with supernatural comedy and galore because I think the episode is quite funny at the same time as being spooky, showing the dramatic suspense of the amber light and the light moving within the station building. I think it draws the dramatic suspense and likely the humor that it causes in the brief point because I think this episode really outdone itself. So that is my review of the episode Haunted Henry from Thomas and Friends. Hope you guys enjoy watching this video. Make sure that you comment, like, and subscribe. And don't forget to hit that notification bell for more subscribes.